He wasn't born with privilege. He didn't have fancy schools or even a quiet room to study. He had a hammer in one hand and a dream in the other. This is the story of Ethan, a boy who worked construction during the day and studied under streetlights at night. A boy who turned sweat into success. Ethan grew up in a small town in Texas. His father was a laborer who worked on construction sites, earning just enough to keep food on the table. Money was always short, and dreams were considered a luxury. But Ethan wasn't like the rest. Even as a kid, he would look up at the tall buildings his father helped build and whisper to himself, "One day I'll design one of these." When his father fell sick, Ethan had no choice but to take up his job. He was just 16 when he started working on construction sites, carrying heavy cement bags, mixing concrete and spending long hours under the burning sun. While other kids in his class went home to air-conditioned rooms, Ethan went home covered in dust and sweat, yet after a quick shower and a simple dinner, he'd sit down with his old torn books and study late into the night. Ethan didn't have a desk or a study lamp. He'd sit on the floor, sometimes reading under the dim streetlight outside his apartment. His friends often laughed, "Dude, you're wasting your time. You'll always be a worker like your dad." But Ethan would just smile and reply, "Maybe, but I'll be a worker who dreams bigger than all of you." He worked double shifts to save for his school books. Sometimes he fell asleep in class, exhausted from work, but he never gave up. One evening, after a long day of work, Ethan's boss saw him studying on the job site during his break. "Why don't you just quit school and work full-time?" the boss asked. Ethan looked up and said softly, "Because I want to build more than walls. I want to build my life." Those words stayed with the boss. From that day on, he allowed Ethan to take some time off during exams and even helped him buy a few textbooks. When the final exams came, Ethan studied harder than ever. He barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. He knew this was his one chance to change his life. When results were announced, the impossible happened. Ethan topped his entire state. Newspapers carried his story. Construction worker's son becomes state topper. People who once mocked him now called him an inspiration. Ethan got a full scholarship to a top engineering college. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just surviving, he was achieving. He studied civil engineering, the very field where his father had spent his life as a worker. Years later, Ethan returned to his town, not as a laborer, but as the chief engineer of a major project. He designed the same kind of buildings he once helped construct. He stood at the site, looked up at the steel structure, and smiled. "This is for you, Dad," he whispered. Moral of the story: Ethan's story reminds us that success doesn't depend on where you start, but on how far you're willing to go. He didn't wait for opportunity. He created it brick by brick.